this is Melissa with Havencraft again. Today we are teaching part of our ongoing series on Cartomancy and Tarot spells. Today's class is part of the Tarot in Depth, and we are focusing on the Tower. As always, I am using the Ciro Marchetti Gilded Tarot Royale, which you can get on the artist website, or at least you used to be able to order it from the artist website. But you use whatever deck works for you. I don't have a whole heck of a lot of time for today's class, so I'm going to get right into it and run through it as fast as I can. In the earliest known list of the trumps, the Sermons de Ludo cum Ali, this card is titled La Sagitta, the arrow, probably referring to the lightning that is shown striking the tower. In a poem written around 1550 by Giulio
Bertoni.
Thank you. It is referred to as La Casa del Diavolo, the house of the devil, and it is later called Il Fuoco, fire. So it's been known by a couple of different names. In the Visconti Sforza Tarot, this card is the second trump that hasn't been preserved. The other is the devil. Since none of the other Visconti decks show a trace of the card even being in them, it's possible that it's not so much that the card didn't survive to now, it's that it was never part of the deck to begin with. The Rosenwald sheet depicts a large building that is being destroyed by the fire that seems to be coming from the sun itself. Flames leap from the crenellations around the tower, and a large entrance gate can be seen. The image especially brings to mind the biblical story of the destruction of the Tower of Babel. Only part of the card is preserved on the carry sheet. A tall tower stands in the center of the image, and there is round debris falling from the sky, and again it's like the sun is setting fire to the top of the deck. Top of the card, thank you. In the 17th century Jacques Viville Tarot, this card is called Le Fendre, lightning. It again portrays fire coming down to earth from a celestial body with debris in the sky. But this time, instead of a tower, a man, or possibly a shepherd, is shown standing close to a tree with his cattle. So, and the Tarot de Marseille, the card is titled La Maison Dieu, literally meaning the house of God. It shows a tower that stands erect in a hilly landscape, and it's bursting open. The top, which has the shape of a crown, is blown away by tongues of fire from heaven, and the sky is again filled with brightly colored falling debris. Two men are falling from the building, smiling slightly, as if they're kind of glad that they're not inside anymore. So, 20th century representation is where we start seeing it defined specifically as the tower instead of known by all these different names. It again is one of the pitch black background cards for the Waite-Smith Tarot, just like the devil. And there's a large flash of lightning in the shape of an arrow that is striking a narrow tower and blasting off its top. A cloaked man and a crowned woman are falling from the burning building, and they're actually screaming and surrounded by flames. So there's definitely some variance in what the card was known as historically and kind of the message that people thought it should be sending. It generally was tied to some kind of a disaster and a possible reaching towards heaven, with it not being a great, super great idea to do so. That's what it was historically. Alrighty. Come on. Notes, cooperate. In the Rider-Waite deck, again, pitch black, the two falling people, the flecks of fire, the top of the tower falling off. It gets interpreted as misery, distress, indigence, adversity, calamity, disgrace, deception, and ruin. It is particularly a card of unforeseen catastrophe, so like the collapse of your entire world when you were not predicting it to do so. Reversed, it's supposed to be the same in a lesser degree. So, like, yes, your world collapsed, but there's a chance of recovery, there's a chance of being okay in the end. Also, oppression, imprisonment, or tyranny. So, instead of falling out of the tower, you're stuck in it.
Right.
So, Book of Thoth, it is break down the fortress of thine individual self. Let thy truth may spring free from the ruins. So the idea is that you're purposefully collapsing sort of the tower of your self
Ego,
and your
essentially.
ego, and being rebuilt as something new.
Be careful with that as a technique that you
Yeah.
invoke intentionally.
Yeah. It tends to represent quarrel, combat, danger, ruin, destruction of your plans, sudden death, and also escape from prison. The tower represents war, but also spiritual renewal. So sort of the idea that you war within yourself and you conquer your worst or more human nature and then
Yeah,
become something better.
Little bit of brief background information in Thoth to make that make sense is that essentially Thoth is theoretically is one of sort of the Enlightenment schools, where the idea is that yourself and your ego and your own definitions get in the way of your actualizing your full potential, your magic, and your road to enlightenment. And so you should deliberately destroy these things to renew yourself magically.
Okay.
Is that...
Yeah, no, that was great. In Golden Dawn, it's the Lord of the Hosts of the Mighty, and it represents ambition, fighting, war, courage, destruction, danger, fall, and ruin.
Yeah.
In Mathers, it is the lightning-struck tower, and represents ruin, disruption, being overthrown, having a great loss, and bankruptcy. Reversed, it's either more or less
Right.
than the normal
The
definition.
same thing, but either more of it or less of it.
Yeah.
Pick.
Well, based on the surrounding
Yeah.
cards, but yeah. Atela, it is the misery card. It represents distress, poverty, a dearth of the things that you need, destitution, catastrophe, adversity, misfortune, pain, torment, sadness, affliction, trouble, punishment, chastisement, disgrace, severity, inflexibility, and harshness. Misery reversed is imprisonment, detention, arrest, captivity, oppression, tyranny, chain, subjugation, and restraint. So again, instead of you sort of escaping the tower due to its destruction, you're stuck inside of it. Yeah. In Paul Foster case, it's Les Feux du Ciel, and it corresponds to Mars. So it's basically conflict, war, aggression.
Destruction.
He also connected it very, very strongly on the Tower of Babel, and that had a direct impact on the divinatory interpretations. The idea of reaching too high, the idea of trying to be greater than you should be, and it leading to...
Delving too greedily and too deep.
Yeah, we're just going to quote Lord of the Rings.
Yep, I like that line.
It is actually one of the few cards where a case said that it was almost an evil card. That you should be wary when you pulled it. That it was not ever pulled for good. I actually disagree with Case. I think it can be pulled for good.
We're going to talk about that in your interpretation.
Yes. Ospensky, it's the Tower of Babel again. So confusion of tongues. Rather than war, it's confusion. It's an inability to communicate. Yeah. It's an inability
Discord, lack of communication, working at cross purposes.
Yeah. Alrighty. So
relates to that.
I interpret the tarot, the tower in the tarot, a little differently.
Yeah.
To me, the tower is a moment to fly or fall. Similar to the Fool card, except where the Fool is sort of the inception, the beginning of the journey. The Tower is, you were journeying on this path, you were going about your life, and absolutely everything was disrupted.
It's sort of an induced flight or fall moment instead of a chosen flight or fall moment.
Like
the Fool is sort of the leap of faith I'm going to step off this cliff and I'm going to fly or fall. This is, oh crap, the ground suddenly vanished underneath me like Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, so the tower is less, I am choosing to take this leap, or I'm unwarily taking this leap without understanding the consequences, which the fool can be as well. And more, holy crap, the building just fell apart around me, and now I'm falling, so I hope
these wings work.
I hope these wings work. So the idea is that for one reason or another, and in some cases it is because you reached for something without really being prepared for the consequences of it. Sometimes because you had too much ego, you were too proud, you built yourself a castle and it sank into the swamp. For whatever reason, you're in this position where everything crumbled around you and you're falling and you're going, oh my god, how do I survive this? How do I find myself again? How do I get the ground under my feet again? How do I rebuild? And in these circumstances, it can turn around and become very, very positive. It can end up being a blessing in disguise. But, keep in mind that that's not me telling you that every time disaster strikes your life, you have to sit there going, well, I'm sure that there's a lesson in it. I'm sure there's a reason it happened. There must be something...
Right, okay.
Someone must mean for me to go through this so that I can become a better person. You don't have to, mentally manipulate and abuse yourself when you're going through something awful already. It's okay to be like, holy fuck, the world just collapsed around me, and this is awful. Like, sure, figure out how not to hit the ground as hard as possible. Try to figure out a lack of terminal velocity here.
This is less, I'm sure this is happening to you for a reason, just accept the will of the gods to teach you this lesson, and more, you're falling through the air, put on your big person pants and figure out a way to not splat when you hit the ground.
But don't necessarily force yourself to interpret this as a positive thing so much as an opportunity to A, not die when you hit the ground, and B, rebuild. Because that's what you do. You have to keep going.
Yeah.
So. So, in a love reading, lots of conflict. It can mean, actually, this is interesting, and a lot of schools have thought, it means that one partner is going to move away. And so you see this when one partner is deployed, you see it if someone moves away for college.
You also see it in a long-distance relationship if they're moving together.
Yeah. So it basically means the collapse of the home and the chance to build a new one. So that's not always a horrible thing in love. But so there's different ways the collapse of a home and a chance to build a new one can be interpreted in a relationship, so, get those clarifying cards.
Yeah, because that could be the two of you are moving out of your individual places and moving in together, and it's awesome, or it could be the house that you've built together is falling apart.
Yeah. In a career reading, probably not the best time to ask for, an advancement on a paycheck, a raise, a better position. Wait until the card is... Now, if it's offered to you, the collapse of one thing as an opportunity for something better, okay.
That's up to you.
That's up to you. I hope that it ends up being a positive collapse, not you get in over your head and this job is too much for you. But generally, it's a sign that you should not delve too greedily or ask for too much. Check your ego and make sure you don't end up with free fall because you demanded too much from your employer. If you're pulling it for a person, like as a personality marker, it's someone who has arguments and altercations and drama and always needs to be the center of attention and causes all kinds of bad stuff to happen to themselves because they're prideful and arrogant and think that the sky itself owes them a favor, and basically a little bit of a god complex that keeps splashing back on them, but they can never see that it's their own fault, that's why that's happening. Sorry, as a request, we're going to start trying to include those as a personality.
Okay.
What is it representing for someone? Because someone asked me to start including that if I could.
Card combinations?
Did we do past, present, future?
No. Past. Everything fell apart. You're asking the question, so you're still here.
Yep. If it's upside down already for the past, it tends to represent that the person did try to fly instead of fall and rebuild and put their life back together and are having at least moderate success.
Okay.
Yeah.
Present.
Present. That's a warning. It's sort of a, okay, everything is crumbling. Get those wings on. Try not to be Icarus. You know.
Right. Be Daedalus, not Icarus.
Yeah. Do your best, and you'll be okay.
Present upside down is actually a really interesting one.
Because it can mean...
This could be about to happen.
And it can mean it is happening, but you have already taken these rapid-fire steps to fly instead of fall. So you're sort of rebuilding the tower while it's collapsing.
Which is always interesting.
Yeah.
Future is a warning.
Future's a warning. It says you are reaching too hard, you have too much ego in the situation, your arrogance or your tendency to seek out strife or your tendency to think you know what's best in the circumstances.
Future in the context of a financial reading, I take a real close look at your investments, I take a real close look at the deals that people are offering you, one of them is going to fall apart.
Future for relationships, why would this home that you're building with someone, why would this relationship possibly be heading towards falling apart, and what steps can you take to avoid it? Do we do anything other than finance and love? I'm having trouble remembering.
Not really.
Okay.
Sometimes, but in the context of home, this one is kind of the standard definition.
Yeah. The Tower plus the Emperor really reinforces that God complex, really reinforces the I know everything about everything, I'm the center of attention, I know what I'm doing even when you really don't, sort of a belief that you should be in control of other people's lives that leads to a lot of disaster, and then they're completely flabbergasted how disaster might strike. Especially if the Emperor is upside down. That is not a good card combination. You do not want.
Tower plus the Eight of Swords. Everything is falling apart. You are stuck.
Yeah.
You cannot fix it. You cannot make it better.
You can just try and escape the cage.
Get out.
Tower plus the Chariot is always okay, it fell apart, but you're already on your road to making it better. It's going to be long, it's going to be hard, it's going to be bumpy, but you've got your big person pants on, you've got your wings on, you'll be alright in the end. The Tower plus the Hermit is learning from the mistakes. So your values, your ideas, your protection of yourself got you to the tower. Everything falling apart. The Hermit is sort of going, all right, I get it. I've got my lantern. I understand what got me here, and I know how to prevent it from ever happening again. The Tower plus the Two of Swords, or the Two of Cups upside down. Relationship is falling apart. Go ahead and sever those cords. Move on.
Yeah. Don't try and preserve this for the sake of the past or for the sake of the kids. It's not there.
Yeah. The Tower plus any of the Pentacles tends to switch it more towards providing for yourself. So that can be work. It can be anything that brings in money. So it can be education too. If it's with the Ace, it tends to represent that, yeah, everything broke down, but now there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
So, okay. We're currently moving into
Queer Tarot?
Queering the Tarot.
This card is your life?
Yeah. So there's sort of two ways I see this pop up for LGBTQIA persons. One, there tends to be disaster in your lives that has to do with
the fact that you live in a discriminatory society.
Yeah, like your reaching for the heaven is everybody else reaching for stuff that they take for granted. So I'm gonna kind of go off for a minute and explain something. There's this idea that when LGBTQIA people ask for something, so say that that's marriage rights, or the ability to have the right name on their birth certificate, or the ability to use a restroom
Whatever it
safely.
may be.
That's considered super, super extreme and liberal.
No,
But it
this
isn't.
is the middle position.
That's
This
the
is
middle position. Everyone
is
deserves...
a human being and deserves these basic rights equally.
Yeah, the extreme position is these people do not deserve equal rights because I say so. The middle position is everyone deserves equal rights, and the extreme opposite of the first one would actually be like, no, gay people get to get married, but straight people don't. Or no, trans people can use the bathroom they feel safe in.
Straight people are doing a worse job with their marriages. Maybe we should take those rights away. No, I'm not actually endorsing it, but the point is that's a more extreme position than equality.
If people were like, straight people and cisgendered people are not allowed to do these things, then that's an actual extreme position. So what gets interpreted by the world around us as us reaching for the heaven, our Tower of Babel, is actually
entirely fair and reasonable and just. And the deck is just stacked against you.
You know, there's people who insist that there's a war against Christianity, and the second you want, like, paganism to be recognized at all, they're like, oh, how could you think of the children?
I am thinking of the children.
Yeah. That's not an extreme position, but they act like it is. They act like it's the Tower of Babel, us making ourselves God and demanding too much.
Yeah.
So sometimes stuff collapses around us because we actually want to be equal. The second way this ends up coming up, because I said there were two, the Tower doesn't bring down things in our lives that were built on a strong foundation. It doesn't. It brings down things that were built on a shaky foundation. It brings down things that were where someone did something unjustly or demanded too much or tried to build something in the swamp or asked for a promotion when they'd been performing shittily at work or
whatever.
Or their partner cheated on them, which doesn't actually come out of nowhere. I mean, I know that it always seems like it does, but there wasn't a strong foundation with that partner. People don't really accidentally cheat. That's not a thing.
That's a thing that happens once, and it's, oh my god, we went to that party and you couldn't make it because you had work, and I don't remember what happened, but I woke up in bed next to my coworker, and I'm incredibly sorry. Like,
Ian and I disagree on this. I don't think that you wind up in bed with someone unpremeditated.
Yeah, and what I was saying, and even then, yeah, no.
So, for example, I'm going to give a tower example for sort of our LGBTQIA, and what I mean by the foundation. If your world falls apart because you came out to your friends, they weren't... Sorry about that interruption. If your world falls apart because you came out to your friends and they weren't really your friends, and I know it's devastating, and I know it feels like you lost everything, but you didn't really have it to begin with. That's the whole point of the tower. Whatever you lose was built on shaky foundation. So now go build it stronger and better somewhere else. If you are in a situation that is unsafe for you, then pulling the tower can actually be an incredibly positive thing. It can symbolize the ripping down, the breaking of an unsafe home, so that you can go build a safe one somewhere else. So the tower for domestic violence or places where like LGBTQIA people are in an unsafe environment can actually be an incredibly positive card. I know it doesn't feel like it at the time. I know that it feels devastating, but it can be a very, very positive one. It means that you will need to restructure a safe environment for you elsewhere, but it can happen. Now, specifically, I want to touch for a second on polyromantic and polyamorous and polysexual relationships.
Okay.
This is not a good card to pull if you are considering incorporating another partner in any kind of relationship dynamic. It means there is a shaky foundation.
So take a step back and look at what you've got going on right now. And be clear and
Poly
open.
doesn't work for everyone, and the tower represents situations where there's bad communication.
Yeah. Not right now, we're in the middle of this.
Okay. I think that's actually all of today's class.
One other thing. Spirit communication and spells.
Oh, thank you.
Can we do readings?
Not right now.
After.
Spirit communication. There are not a lot of spirits that I want to be communicating with using this card on a
Well, you
regular
tend to
basis.
use it to communicate with, like, Mars, Aries, any
Yeah.
of the war gods, any of the conflict gods.
Also, some of the gods of primordial change. Think chaos in Greek mythology.
Think Tiamat.
Yeah.
So anytime you want to sort of something that eats, and then there's a chance to rebuild. So it would be a great card to communicate, like, with your Manconda.
Right. Spells.
Spells, if you want guidance on how to restructure the life, on how to pull yourself back together, this is a really great card. Spells for transformation, it's going to be a painful transformation. Like, if you want to, you can print out the section of the Narnia book where he's turning from a dragon to a human
Right.
again, and it's painful and it's awful, but it taught him a lesson. Print that out. Carry those pages and the card around with you.
Go for it.
Combined with eggshells, snakeskin, especially if it's already kind of happened or it's going to happen even if you wouldn't like it to. Like,
Go ahead.
if you already know that you're getting kicked out of school, if you already know that your partner's moving away no matter what you say, if you already know
Go ahead
that
and try to
you're
ease that
losing your job,
transition.
then going ahead to ease the transition is not a bad thing. In the cases of it hasn't happened yet and you want to delay it, doing a spell amplifies the work, but you need to actually go do the work of communicating and trying to fix it. You can't just do the spell and not back it up with real world action. That never is a good idea.
The other thing that you might want to use this for as a focus for a spell is what we were talking about earlier with the enlightenment style of work where you are trying to break
And then-
down your own ego.
Be careful.
Be careful
You
with
know,
that.
maybe consider seeing a therapist
I
as you go through
recommend
that
it.
transition. So-
But this would be a reasonably good focus for that as well if you are consciously, intentionally doing that work and knowing what you're doing.
Now, another thing that you could consider using this for is if you are going through a gender or identity transformation, where you are literally trying to pull down one
Edifice.
one you that the world has seen and put a new one in its place.
Yeah.
This would be a good one. And again, you're going to want to incorporate things like snakeskin sheds and eggshells and butterfly wings or
And a preserved seahorse if you can get one.
Okay. You can use
Sorry, that was random. but,
caterpillar, chrysalis, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I think that's our class for today. So,
If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, ask in the comments, email us, whatever you want to do, and we will see you all next time.
okay.